in my evolution as you know, a writer is the sense of being able to emote it when it's happening. Because for me, I feel like a lot of that time, that's usually the best in the sense of you're capturing that. Like, it's cool you can pen stuff, but to me, when I first hear something, I usually try to either just freestyle with it and chop it up later, or immediately just do something with it, because whatever that first thing is usually like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no,
so and there's joints I've penned or whatever, but you know, that was really on this project particular something that I was conscious about, that as soon as we get it popping, it's like boom, this is the melody, this is the hook, this is whatever, and it, you know, it speaks for itself in the music, I really feel like, with this project. So
yeah, and I think, you know, being like one of like the more unique female artists like in Toronto, just like even like with the rise in Canada's like hip hop industry too, like even with you and other notable female Canadian like rappers making some noise in the scene, especially in Toronto, how do you feel about the female rap scene in Toronto or Canada in general, and do you feel like it's much similar in America with the support, or would you say that it's different in a way?
I feel like we just don't have the support in the way that the States does as far as our artists. I feel like numbers wise, we don't have, I don't think, we have the resources, but I do think, we have a tremendous amount of talent in Toronto specifically, but in the country as well. But Toronto, and I feel like for so many years we went overlooked and, you know, just like brushed off, until you have artists now that really blew up, and people are kind of paying attention to the dot more, which I feel like is a long time coming. There was artists doing it from time that never really got the shine, but it's really dope to see people, you know, getting to that level worldwide. And you know, I think the infrastructure needs to be, you know what I mean, like just revamped completely. I feel like Toronto and Canada in general, just the support for artists, especially when it comes to like labels and like all this other stuff, it just was never really there, and it's still not. You know, I think that's why a big reason why a lot of artists have to leave and blow up somewhere else, and then come back, and then they get the respect or the support from the labels or whoever, which is unfortunate because it still happens a lot, and even I can attest to that as well. Like just the love you get being in Europe or in the States or other places where, you know, it's the craft itself is really appreciated and held to a standard of respect and support, so artists can continue to do what they do. And yeah, I really feel like, I think Toronto's becoming more aware of it, but I still feel like we have a good ways to go. But the more artists from here that keep leveling up and doing their thing wherever, however, by any means, the better, because the talent's been here. It's just people just didn't see it like that. If you're in it, I feel like a lot of us creatives, period, not just music, but I think if you're in the scene in Toronto, you kind of know how much fire is here, period. But it's just like, you know what I mean? It's kind of like just the rest of the world kind of understanding it, and us building ourselves to have those platforms here to, you know what I mean, build each other up to those levels that we need to be at, you know, as far as infrastructure, you know what I mean?
All right. So how do you feel about the Toronto music scene in a way? Like, I know that you said it's more about the support that might be like an issue here and there too, and just making it in like other different parts, but I don't know if you feel that there should be some changes on the direction of where the Toronto music scene should go to, or if you feel that it's at a better place right now than it would be.
Yeah, I feel like we're probably in a better place than we have been probably ever, as far as you know, opportunities, and obviously like social media changed that a lot across the board. I feel like, I mean, minus COVID, because that's a whole other conversation for artists, but right now I just think, you know, more you know, arts spaces too as well that support artists. Like you know, there's been a few recent ones, but I think moving forward from COVID, a lot of things have closed down. So it's like, how are we going to have, you know, spaces that are accessible for artists, whether it's studios or, you know, creative spaces that can be those hubs for artists, and, you know, aren't don't demand, like, you know, that a lot of, you know, spaces right now as it is, you know, you have to pay a lot for studio time, you got to pay for all this stuff, and that's what it is. But when I go other places and I've seen the way that they have a lot of, you know, incubators that are there for the artists, and just like ways to help sustain the art and the culture of the city. And I feel like Toronto has such a rich, you know, diverse culture and music scene in general. There's so much different influences and just vibes. That's what makes Toronto so dope, I feel like, too. And anyone who's from here or has come here kind of knows that. It's just, I think, elevating our artists to be seen, you know, in other places as well, to get on that level where everyone's self-sustainable and can really, you know, make a full living off their craft, not have to kind of, you know, have one foot out or have 10 hustles or have 20 hustles, where it's like they could just take all their time and focus it on what they do best, you know. And I know that's part of an independent artist, is like, you kind of got to wear 10 hats, you got to do a lot of stuff at once, and I know that's part of the game. But I think, you know, Toronto itself, just thinking of more ways that, you know, we can support independent artists as well. And even artists I know that are signed don't feel like they have that type of support from the label, or, you know, they've signed contracts that they're not happy with, and just like even understanding that, the business side of things. But, you know, I mean, there's places like Remix and Launchpad. There are spots where, you know, that can happen for young people, and there is more of that happening. But I think it's a process, you know, it's a process in the sense that I feel like a lot of this is new for Toronto in that sense, whereas other cities like New York or Chicago, they've had that happening for so long, and they've had that, you know, kind of foundation, whereas Toronto's younger in that sense. So I think they're still figuring out a lot of how that would look and how that would work out, especially now after, you know, the pandemic situation. But in general, you know, we're blessed in a lot of ways as well to be in this city where we do have access to each other, to so many different, you know, influences in general. Because like, I feel like that's what speaks to a lot of our music too. It's like, when you hear, you know, anyone, Junes, Bombay, me, it's like all of that, we grew up with so many different cultures around us and friends, and it was just like all that influenced us, you know. So I think that's why a lot of Toronto artists, when people from away hear the music, they're like, oh, like, they can't really put it in one genre necessarily, right? It's not like, oh, that's just hip-hop, or, oh, you know, even with the Monstar tape, it's not necessarily just hip-hop or just R&B. It's like a fusion of all the things we came up with, you know. So it's like, I feel like people from Toronto get that, but when you're trying to explain it to other people, they're like, well, it's not really, but then you sing and you rap, and it's like, yeah, but that's just what it is. Because I feel like we had to be versatile. And I think coming up in Toronto, because there wasn't a lot of opportunity, there was this whole kind of like crabs in a bucket cage mentality too, where it was like, you know, a lot of times the OGs weren't necessarily trying to bring us up with them. It was like, because things were scarce, it was kind of more like, no, we're gonna keep our links to ourselves, we're gonna keep that to ourselves, and like, y'all figure it out on your own. You know. And I think for us now, being, you know, kind of being that, coming up to that with the younger people that we kind of mentor and you know, work with, we're trying to show them, we're always trying to show them what we know and kind of bring them with us, and the opposite, because we know how it feels to come up and have, you know what I mean? It's just like, feel like you're hitting a brick wall because you had those 1-2 people. But in general, and I'm not even mad at those people, because I get it, they probably felt like, damn, there's only so much to go around, I gotta hold on to mine, I can't really put you on, you know. But I think that's changing now, that it's opening up for the city, that I think people's minds are changing a bit. And I know for me and my squad of people, that we really are conscious of that, and always try and like spread that knowledge and share that, because it's like, one, like, we're all in this together, we're all in it from the same city, especially in our own neighborhoods too. Like, it's that type of like scarcity mentality is, we're just you know what I mean, it's, that's done, like, you know what I mean, like, just keep it moving. And it's like, I think that's one thing that I'm starting to see a shift with the younger generation coming up too, and also just the whole vibe in the city. I feel like there's more camaraderie than there was in the past, and more of that just allyship happening in the movement in general, which is nice to see. It's a positive thing, I feel like.
I know what you mean, and definitely, like, I 100% agree. I really don't really say it as much, in my opinion, based on it, but I think the two things that are kind of making the Toronto scene like more weakened in a way, or like not as the same as it used to be, it would be the allocation of funds like within SOCAN and like Factor, as well as like still trying to have like that whole niche sound towards Toronto. And with the first one, I'm not gonna lie, allocation of funds for SOCAN and just like even for Factor 2, just getting money for grant money just to make music too, like it's a lot of things that artists usually need in order to make their music too. And I do feel like it's a pick and choose situation on which artists deserve more money than others. And it actually happened recently too, like in a Twitter post, that Grimes, who's like married to Elon Musk, received $100,000 from SOCAN for, I think, an artist's like specialty, or a general like artist like specialty for music. And that 100K supposedly went to Elon Musk for some reason too, and it kind of like cost me a board too. And I'm not gonna lie, like, it is questionable too, because that 100K could be split into like 10 or 20K to like maybe one artist or like 5 artists or so, and they could have used that to make a music video or like a project or whatever else is needed too. And even with this whole like niche sound too, I think Toronto just needs to get out of that whole Drake, Weekend, Tory Lanez type sound and move on to a new thing that other people should look for too. And it can only happen to some people here and there too, and like in some cases too, the only thing that could remove that type of sound is like Toronto street rap, where you've noticed like an influx of violence and politics going on too. So I think in other cases too, like the only people who have hit like a mainstream break that didn't have to use those two types of sounds in a way is like Toby, who recently made it off with his project and has worked with like the game and everyone else too. Like, I don't know if you would agree with that, or if you think it would be kind of different.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really exciting time to see, a lot of the art and creatives coming up right now. Like, just even recently with the Polaris, because June's was, on the list for that, and it really made me pay attention to it in a different way. I feel like Jesse, like, enough of the homies were on that list, and it was just one. Toby, like a lot of artists that are coming out of the city and just doing really dope music. And it's nice to see some people, one, getting the credit that they should have been getting from time, and also just like that lens, that scope that they have on them, the eyes they have on them now. But I think it's a good start, but we still have a long way to go. But at the same time, it's exciting in the sense that I feel like a lot of this happening now is like trailblazing in a way, right? Like, it's blazing the path for those coming up after us. Those are in it, those of us that are in it right now. Because one thing's for sure, I feel like Toronto always being viewed as the underdog, coming up as like kind of always the underdog to, New York or Chi-Town or all our counterparts that we grew up listening to back when we didn't even have access, and you'd have to listen to WBLK and Buffalo Radio and on Detroit to even hear certain tunes. You'd have mans slipping you up tapes from the States since we couldn't even get the music here, you feel me? So like, we always had that underdog kind of mentality. So one thing I feel like it made us super resourceful, because we've always been that by any means we're gonna do it, and that's a lot of the times what we've all done, whether we had support from whoever, you know what I mean? It was like we found a way, no matter what that meant, we did it, you know what I mean? And I think that speaks to the resilience and the strength of our city, but also more so the creatives that have you know, built the culture of the music scene, you know, without nothing, and just like, yo, we're gonna do it regardless, you know. And I feel like a lot of that hard work and blood, sweat, and tears is coming into fruition for a lot of artists, you know, that have kind of put in that 10,000 hours, and now it's like, whether they want to hear it or not, or believe it or not, it's happening. So you know what I mean? It's like
yeah, I know what you mean. I just have these last 3 questions. I'll just do them like kind of like randomly. So if you so one of the signature traits about you is your sports inspired attire, from jerseys